think, yeah. Good evening. I have 6:30 and I'll call the meeting to order. So the first thing on the agenda is the salary schedule. And I think Mr. Ty Lasher has a presentation, maybe Ted Henry or both. I don't know.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We are going to tag team you tonight. So I'm just going to start out with just some basic information to kind of frame the topic that you're talking about, which is the proposed salary schedule. So just some basics. You all know this, but the role of the city manager is to hire, appoint, promote, transfer, sign, demote, lay off, et cetera, the employees. So your expectations of me and the public is for me to hire and employ the most qualified, experienced staff, keep morale high, to retain our good employees, encourage efficiency and innovation, and retain the best employees. That's your goal for me. And as far as personnel, the council's role is to hire and employ a city manager, approve the annual budget, which it includes the salary expenditures, approve the personnel handbook, which contains benefits, and approve the salary schedule, which is what we're going to talk about tonight related to compensation. So one of my roles is to meet the expectations of the residents and the governing body. I need your support for the competitive salary schedule, the effective personnel handbook, make sure we have good benefits and financial backing in the budget, which you have done those for me. And the last piece is the salary schedule that we're going to talk about. So a little background history. In 2021, we hired WSU to do a salary study. And the study recommended a number of increases. The salary schedule adopted in 2021 only addressed the police, which was our emergency at that point. A few of the council members were here back then, and some of you were not. But at that point, we had lost basically half our staff in the police department and had to do something. And so there was everybody in the police department got substantial increases, and that solved the issue. I mean, since that point, we've been full, and if someone leaves, he's got someone replaced very quickly. So that issue was solved. But the proposed salary schedule that is in your packet, Ted and I used that study, but we also looked at current market conditions, because we all know things have changed over the last couple of years in relation to employees. So a little bit about staffing, just some comparisons. For 2023, we will have 43 full-time. That includes the 3 that you approved in the budget. For example, Park City has 54. They hired a couple people. Valley Center has 50. So again, you can see that we are very efficient with our staff. So what was included in that 2021 salary study from WSU was the administration per positions were below peer wages. And the reason for that is we've had a lot of tenured employees that haven't looked or left. And so we had to look at the market to bring new people in. So, which is a positive for us, but a negative for them because their wages didn't keep up because we weren't going to the market every time. Public works comparisons were better aligned, but the supervisory position needed adjusted. The police department was well below, and that was addressed in that salary schedule. And overall, 70% of the positions were below the midpoint identified in the peer communities. So the study that Ted and I did, basically we looked at all the police positions. They were increased in 2021. They're still at the top of the market. However, there are cities that are raising their markets, just what we had talked about. Some of them are doing hiring bonuses and such, so they're all trying to match Bel Aire. So in a year or 2 or 3, I would imagine we'll be back at the middle again because everybody's going to adjust their pay. We're proposing a cost of living increase of 5%. That was included in the budget. Performance increases could be anywhere from 2.5 to 0 to 2.5 to 2.5% with a 2% bonus. That was in the budget. So what our competition is, we look at our competition as other cities because our guys have water certifications and stuff, and they're going to go work for another city, or their equipment operator, they're going to go work for another city. So that's who we look at. Andover, they're proposing 6% cost of living, and then they've got a 10% pool for step increases, bonuses, and such. Valley Center is doing an 8.5% COLA. Derby's a 10% COLA, and Park City's running an 8% COLA. So that's what our peer cities are doing. And then, I know there's been discussion about, well, do we do another salary study? That's going to cost money, $10,000 to $30,000 to hire that done. The problem we run into with salary studies is you really have to spend the money to get a true comparison, because every city, like for us, what we call equipment operator, they also fix water main breaks, they'll fix sewer breaks, they'll run equipment. And in other cities, the water operator or the equipment operator may only run the mower. And so it's difficult saying that, apples to apples when each each city does their positions do different things. We'd rather just see that money spent on, the salaries rather than doing a study. So we talk about efficiency. I'm always up here preaching about how efficient we are, and I always look for different ways to share that with you and the public. And everybody here understands dollars and cents and numbers. And so I wanted to show you something a little different this time. So we know the budget. We've been at 45.73 since 2016. In 2022, we dropped to 44.5 mils, and next year 44.5 mils. So actually did a mil decrease from previous years. So you look at, where Bel Aire falls. Our mill is 44.5. You can see that there's some higher, there's some lower, but we're right in the middle. Of course, then you got to add in the school district and everything like that. And we're a total mill of about 146.5, and that's what our citizens pay. So what I wanted to do is, what do we get to spend as staff? Well, our land payments equal about 13.6 mils. So that's 17% of our budget, or $1.2 million of the general fund. So what we're actually responsible for, and that provides the services to our citizens, is really 30.9 mils is what we run this city on, because we can't touch that land debt. That goes out and we have no ability to spend that. So really all we get to spend is 30.9. That's lower than Wichita. That's what we operate on, is lower than Wichita. So this is kind of hard to see, but if you look at what we operate on at 30.9, everybody is way high. The next high, Goddard's 33. So I've got them listed out. Wichita's at 32.7, Mays, Keachai. Look at the numbers. And so when we talk about efficiency, all we get to spend is 30.9 mils, and that's lower than Wichita. So I think our citizens should be pretty proud of that. One thing that I found was very interesting is Park City's mill is 44.5. We know they don't have 1.3 in land debt, but look at their assessed valuation, $100 million. Ours is 43.6, including, but ours is 77 mils. So that mill, that they're a mill higher, and that mill is bringing in a lot more money because their assessed value is 100 million, and ours is only 77. So there's a lot of ways you can look at money, but this is just something that I kind of did a spin on, is what do we really get to spend? What are we responsible for? And when we talk about in 10 years, when that land debt is gone, whoever's sitting in your seats has a whole new look on taxes and things for Bel Aire. It's going to be totally different landscape, because today we're operating on 30.1 mils. So with that, I'm going to switch it over. Ted's going to give you an update on the budget. We're coming to the year end, and so he's got some information.
Yeah, sometimes I just like to take a step back a little bit. We talked a lot about revenue neutral rate during the budget cycle. This is really the time you really know where your revenue neutral rate is, because you'll get your taxes over the next tax statement next week or so. Flip it on the backside and you'll see the change in taxes for each jurisdiction. And that's kind of the actual. A lot of the mailers that went out are kind of based on revenue neutral rate and a little confusing, but I always like, this is the receipt, this is where we're at. So if you turn your taxes over, Ty mentioned a little bit about it. I'm happy the final valuations came out late last week, and our mill levy is exactly like we projected during bill season, during budget season, which is good. I think it's a fraction lower, but I did the math, and for every $100,000, say you have a $200,000 house, that you'll pay $2 less than we thought you would pay during budget cycle. So that's good. And actually, if you look at total mill levy, as you know, Bel Aire is only 30% of the total property taxes you'll pay. The total assessed value for Bel Aire went down a mill. So I think our partners on the other side of the 30%, the 70% went down fractions as well. So that should be good news for all citizens, which is nice. What we're talking a little bit about today is salary schedule, and then I'm touching a little bit on budget performance. We're going to do a final budget performance probably January, maybe 1st February after the end of the fiscal year. I don't like touching on expenditures because we're all on trend right now, but you never know what happens in the last 2 months of the year. I'm focused a little bit more on revenues tonight. When I'm in budget season, I try to project where our revenues and expenditures are going to be at the end of the year. And I start those projections around June. If you remember right, we had a lot of growth in the first and second quarter of this year. And being the guy I am, I'm pretty calculated, and I don't want to put us ever in a bad position. So I tried to, maybe it's not going to be that hot. Really, permits and growth have been just continued to be at those levels all year. So when we look at permits, fees, and licenses, we're going to be around $750,000 in permits this year, which is outrageous. So that'll bring in about another $450,000. And then our sales tax, here's just a simple graph that shows, why we approve those three positions. I think it's very strategic placement of those, because we're going to, as I said, the first 2 quarters we were growing or issuing permits like crazy. I thought, okay, what if we slow down? It didn't slow down at all. It kept going. So we're in a better strategic position today because we made those choices in June and July. When we think of, hey, permits issued 300, that's great. That's 300 new houses. I kind of look at it as housing units. So if we build maybe 100 duplexes, that's 200 new utility hookups. So that's what that other line shows. We might have 300 new permits, but we have actually 500 new hookups that I'm going to have to try to staff to explain the water policies and all the things you go through when you start new service. This also creates something we didn't really touch on during budget season. For public works, anytime someone or a contractor wants to do anything underground, they have the utility locates. I think we have one employee almost designated to just do locates all throughout the month. I think we average about 700 different locates we have to do. So if you think about it, if we're fully staffed in public works, say we're down short 2 public works members, that really means we're short 3 because we have one guy have to do locates for the safety. So something to keep in mind as we continue to grow, we continue to find these little pockets of time that we find that we didn't account for or that we couldn't imagine. So that's why I'm trying to look at it. On sales tax wise, it as you know, in the it is continued to exceed expectations, which is a good problem. People are continued to spend money in the area. We get a portion of the Sedgwick County 1 cent sales tax, and that's been a good revenue source for us. In 2023, I was pretty conservative on my estimates, thinking who knows what the market's going to go, if people are going to start constraining spending. But right now, there's no sign of it as we enter the holiday season. So that's a good indicator on the economy or on our local budget. that was kind of the general fund revenues that I was looking at. Now, a lot of our public works staff get paid out of water and sewer funds, so we're going to look a little bit of that. That's John in the middle fixing a water line break, I believe. I hope it's a water line break. If that's a sewer line, that's not a very fun day for John. We talk about growing and getting more and more lines and more meters and more mains. We're going to have a lot more of these types of problems. And I think, we completed the shower project from when we built this building for the police department. They get sent out on calls that they want to come back and take a shower. Our public works, they have one bathroom, one toilet. They have no shower down there. So something to think about as we continue the next 5-year process is how are we serving our employees as well? Just a little something I thought of when we looked at this. Water, as you know, we are unique in our customer base in Bel Aire. We don't have a large industrial water user. A lot of our good and bad years from water sales come from, is it dry or is it wet? Because irrigation makes up a lot of our top customers. This year, no surprise, it was pretty dry, very dry late summer. And then to add it, and I think what we're seeing here in the last couple of billing cycles is that drought was some sort of great drought that, and my yard was the same, as it killed a lot of patches of grass. And now everybody's overseeding and you have to water to overseed. So water revenues are well in 2023, but as you know, we get a wet summer, it reverses the fortune. And so I just wanted to touch on a little bit of that. Sewer funds are a little more stable. Sewer revenues are a little more stable, mainly because we go off a winter average consumption rate. But as we add more citizens to the system, the better this will perform as well. However, on the flip side, the more citizens you add, the more service calls, the more expenses you incur. A little bit of economic indicators. I try to look every once in a while. It's sometimes not always apples to apples, but we look at job openings, and this is non-farm job openings. As you can say, this goes back to 2002. Of course, they're up. I tend to ask what our department heads are doing. Probably one of the biggest assets Ty and I do is we're pretty friendly people. We go to conferences. We meet as many people as we can in like positions. I have a lot of contacts that I talk to, and so does Ty. Right now, we're two employees down at Public Works. We called 9 candidates. 1 showed up for the interview. We talked to Derby, and they have 6 public works positions open right now across town or across county. Their council's really judging right now the same thing you guys are. What are we going to do with our pay structure on the public works side? Can we recruit? Because as you know, these are pretty hard specialized skills to come by. We have water techs, a lot of different areas. So the job market, especially in this area, we tend to pay close attention to in our experiences. Consumer price index, I think it's been all over the news, so I'm not going to do too crazy. I understand everybody has their thoughts on this type of modeling, but all I can say is, you look at your energy bill, it's going up. So that's one thing we also have to keep in mind as we're stewards of our own budgets, but also our employees have their budgets as well. This is a slide I just jumped in. 10-year treasury. Our GO bonds tend to follow relatively closely to the 10-year treasury note. And I know there's been a lot, the feds are going to continue to increase their interest rates. Interest rates are going to go up, but I think it's also important. Cities aren't a year. We don't look at year to year. We have a long life expectancy and history. So I just want to show you this slide, because this goes back to, I believe, 80, at least that's 85 right there. And if you look, the average rates are around where we're at right now, 3 to 5%. If we look at the long term, yes, there was a huge, great opportunity in 2020. We refinanced every bond we could refinance. I did 3 issuances in 2020. So we're ahead of the game on a lot of our debt, especially our land debt. Ty did mention, yes, it's a big issue for the city. but we're at a low rate. We're able to match it. So what we're talking about today is the schedule before you, and I'll kind of refresh your memory. Really, it's not the biggest thing. During our budget cycle, we budgeted for all our full-time staff to get 5% raises. We didn't dictate if it was going to be a COLA or a merit. We just kind of said, let's budget 5, and then today we'll worry about what we want to do. What our suggestion is, Ty and I's, is to go ahead and make 2.5% of that a COLA for all full-time employees, and then have a 2.5 when their merit, when their annual review happens, so that they have a merit to step up. Ty mentioned our salary study we did in 2021. We adjusted police officers a lot, and then a few spot positions as well. But as I kind of mentioned, we have 2 openings in public works. We're growing crazy. What we felt would be necessary is anybody that hasn't been here or started before January 1 of 2020, which was, so you have to be here at least a year, and didn't get adjusted in the 2021 salary adjustments, we would go ahead and do a 2.5% COLA. So they would receive a 5% COLA. Everyone else would receive a 2.5. We felt that it would be the best strategy we can as we compete for these positions going forward. And that's what the new salary schedule reflects, what it does. And you can't really see it. You might be able to see it in this slide, is it takes off the first two steps on all positions other than police, because all police got adjusted fairly well in 2021, and we were looking at comparables as well, and they still fall within what market is today. And then added 2 more on the end. So what we did is essentially shifted our pay scale, and then we'll go ahead and process the COLAs on the first pay period in January, would be our suggestion. I don't know if there's another slide, Ty, or that one's it, but that's really what we're thinking about. And open to discussion if we need to.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate the effort and the work there. I think that you've come up with a pretty sound plan from what I've seen of it. I've looked through it quite a bit on Sunday.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for doing that, and I'm fully supportive of what your recommendations are, but would like to hear from council members.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
the recommendation, I think, makes a lot of sense to me. It's very consistent with what we discussed. I guess the only question I have is with the Public Works Department specifically. We do have 2 open roles. Those are challenging to fill. We're hearing from other cities that they're challenging to fill. Is the strategy going to position us well to hire for those roles at a competitive rate? And I know our job codes aren't broken out by Public Works. They're kind of groupings of roles, but the fact that we have open roles there and they're challenging to fill is an indicator that maybe it's headed in a direction that we've seen before in other departments.
And really, that's what we're trying to stave off in the most responsible manner possible. The real work, and I think we're starting, is to help promote within as well, get new training for, the culture is very important. Ty can talk to a lot about this strategy, as much as, we'll continue to broadcast that we have jobs open and we're here. But we can't force anybody to apply.
Well, and apply the COLA across the board and the merit percentage across the board. That indicates a strategy to me that we feel like we're pretty consistently behind the market in all areas. Whereas, a different percentage by department would maybe tell me that we feel like the market is moving for different roles in different ways. And I'm just interested in your perspective on, am I reading that right? That we feel like we need to do the, consistent 2.5% COLA and 2.5% merit across the board, because we think this market for all these roles are moving at a pretty consistent rate.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty fair estimate.
The other thing we did, if you compared them side by side, is we used to have equipment operator 1 and 2, and we added equipment operator 3. So again, when we have someone that's been here 10 years, that's got certain certifications and have proven to be a great equipment operator or whatever, then we could possibly move them up to another scale that takes us more competitive, because those are the ones we want to keep, the ones that have all this expertise and the years of service, so we can reward them by moving them up another slot. So that was another addition that we had to address your concern, Justin.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. David,
On a little clarification on the merit, is that a yes or no? A person gets a merit or they don't, or is it graduated by their rating?
Okay, here's where it gets a little, so on the merit side, you either are at standard or below standard. If you're at or above standard, you get the merit 2.5%. In 2020, the city council decided we want to pay a bonus program for performance. So if you reach above standard or exceptional, you get, so at above standard, you could get like a 1% bonus. It's just a one-time bonus. And then at an exceptional rating, you get 2% bonus. So you get a merit for being just a good standard employee. But if your evaluation determines that what you've done this year has gone above and beyond, you get that bonus. And that's just a bonus. What we're talking, yeah. So if that helps.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Hamburg.
I just want to first of all say thanks to Ted and Ty for doing some footwork and saving the money on the study. I appreciate that. I agree with what you guys said. Just for me personally, I get a little nervous adding positions, and it takes a lot of convincing, as we saw during budget cycle. But I can appreciate as we grow, we add employees. But I think this seems totally reasonable to bring us more in line and not lose employees and spend money on turnover. So I appreciate your work, and I fully support this plan.
Well, I think it probably goes without saying, labor market is just really tight. And that's not just the United States. I was in Mexico last week, and it's tight down there too. So it's not just here. Maybe it's all North America, maybe it's worldwide. I don't know that, but that's what I'm seeing. It's just people just are having a hard time finding the workers with the right attitude and the right skills to go to work. So we just have to recognize that, and that's where the competition is. That's why we got that competition. And we don't just compete against cities. We compete against industries as well, because I think we lost one employee to one of our contractors, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Dean.
I also wanted to add that we were competing against an industry, and obviously you mentioned equipment operators, and construction is going crazy right now. But I appreciated the comments, and I appreciate all the effort, and fully support the plan. And I also appreciate your guys' perspective on that Bel Aire is a special place to work. People seem to enjoy being an employee, and that you guys understand that this is keeping us competitive, but they're going to stay because they enjoy working here. And I really appreciate hearing that you care a lot about the employees, that you care a lot about the culture, and that says a lot about you guys too. So thank you.
Ted?
Yeah.
How much would a 1% COLA raise across the board cost the city? Do you have that number? I saw something thrown out
From
about-
our budget, I'm just trying to think what our bonus program would be. And that would be, I believe, in the realm of $40,000,
Okay.
40.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking a 5% total isn't that great a deal. And if I was an employee, I'd like to see more given the current financial world. And I know we didn't budget that, but I didn't know if that was something we could swing or not.
And here's where it goes back on the council's priorities, and you know, as we go into 2024 budget cycle, what that does. I'm not, you might clarify we're at 5% if you count 2.5% COLA with the 2.5% merit. So you're wanting 5% for all employees, but or 7.5. Yeah, that's where I'm.
I was thinking maybe a 3.5 or 4 COLA. I'm not sure what the COLA should be. I mean, like Social Security is going up by almost 8%. So I'm not sure how we should be competing with the rest of the market, given the way wages are going up everywhere.
I appreciate that, but I also think that you need to be cautious on this, but you need to be also willing to revisit this and maybe revisit it as soon as 6 months from now to say, how are we doing? Okay,
And that's what it's going to be now that
because this market is really, really volatile right now, and I don't have that crystal ball, and I don't know if anybody else does either. You know, we're hearing everything from recession to boom, and it's like, well, what is it? I don't know. You know,
And like Justin's concern is there may be one position that we need to get more money into, but it's just my thinking is this seems small to me now. It seemed bigger when we first talked about this.
Yeah, and that's where I'm no stranger to the council chamber. I'm not afraid. I'm here tonight asking for a little more than what we talked about in really August. So yeah, I'll continue to monitor the market, monitor what we're seeing. I'll be here in January, February, March, April. Yeah, we'll constantly be thinking and talking about that.
Okay, just so we don't get behind the ball and lose people because we're not keeping an eye on it.
Ted, another question I had was, is there any other tools that you guys are seeing? I think I read in the packet that there was other things you're seeing other cities do. Do you believe there's any other tools that you need to recruit the open positions? I didn't really hear much talked on that.
I've heard some, some referral bonuses, but I don't know how well that program's doing for other cities. I haven't heard. Have you, Ty? We have a referral bonus currently, and nobody's really cashed in on it.
Yeah, we've heard some doing sign-on bonuses, where like if you join up and you get $500 and then 6 months you get 500 and things like that. The struggle that we have, well, there's two, is, at some point it ends. And then if they jumped here because of that, are they going to jump somewhere else because someone else offers it? The other thing is, what about our employees now? They've been with us and they didn't get a bonus because they're new, and how does that affect them? So our thought was, the COLAs, the step increases, to just do that, and be fair with that. And then honestly, the culture, and you support that. We will do like everybody gets a Christmas dinner, and there's things that we try to do to make sure that people enjoy their jobs here. And that's important. I mean, we did a survey just recently on with our staff about, what they liked, and pay's always up there, but your culture, your work environment, those were all up there very high as well. So we try to keep those going, but on the bonus, the sign-on bonuses and stuff, we're just a little nervous about those.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I appreciate that. I think that you open that can, and that's one you just don't get to put back away. And unless we see that that's just the way the whole market goes, then I think we're wiser to hold back on that.
Thinking about other benefits, every full-time employee is eligible for CAPERS. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then I believe it was at our retreat, we had talked about maybe additionally closing another half day to help ease the workload? And have you guys thought any more about that approach?
Ted and I have talked a little bit about it, but we haven't really come up with any thoughts yet on it.
My thing, and we Ty spearheaded it, and Columbus Day, some holidays that maybe were not closed to the public officially, but we'll close to the public and have an in-service. I think workload's big, but I think it's also having an opportunity. I sat with my staff for a whole morning and we just kind of watched some TED Talk, just did some of that employer stuff that you really need to do, some training, some, how are you guys feeling? Some of that temperature check type stuff. When you're really busy, sometimes you just get it going and nobody, checks in on that sort of thing. So I think we'll be probably looking at a lot of those types of days, maybe not a standard schedule, but I thought that was really beneficial to our employees, as well as you'd be surprised how much, just picking up Chipotle or some bagels helps as well. And I know that doesn't pay the bills, and that's all part of building that culture. And I appreciate, Ty's support when we do that.
Just a word of caution, and I don't think you do this, but I've seen where these, and some places call them work days, or you work every day, but they call them, special work days. If those become task driven, they become ineffective, I think, and they don't do what you're trying to do, is improve the culture. And I've seen that happen in some businesses that I've been in, and they're demoralizing at that point. So you just, a word of caution, don't become task driven tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, I think, did we cover this? And I appreciate your willingness to revisit this if we need to in a few months, because there were some cities that during last year, during the summer, that did some increases, some cost of living increases and stuff. And that's why Ted and I wanted to get this to you this month to get it adopted, so our employees knew that things were coming down the road. So, and I just wanted to share this because I thought Justin might appreciate it. But our pay schedule is one page. Here's Derby's. There's 4 pages. So again, we try to stay efficient. We try to stay effective with our pay schedule and stuff like that. So, anyway.
Yeah, please watch the market, and if we need to revisit this, then we should, because I don't want our people to feel like we don't care.
Yep.
That should never happen.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I do appreciate that. Okay, are we ready to move on to fireworks?
I believe so. Unless somebody has some more questions or comments about budget or salaries.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with the firework, this is just a recap. That was approved in 2009. Prior to that, Bel Aire didn't allow it. And the ordinance allowed for sales for 1 week, and only 4 permits were to be sold, had to be affiliated with a nonprofit, and you could only set them off on the 4th of July. And then 2015, it was revised to allow for outdoor displays and remove the affiliation with nonprofits. And of course, the reason that came up was the Lions were concerned about that, because they work with a company and they get some funding for that. So this was the proposed revision that we talked about at the last council meeting, or workshop, I'm sorry. But out of that, we had some additional questions that council had. So I went out to our vendors, heard back from 3 of them. We have 4, so heard from 3. What about the sale dates? Should that be changed? Less sale dates. Right now it's at 7. All 3 said they wanted it to stay at 7 days. They said that the lowering of the dates put them at disadvantage to other cities. They only get 7 days out of the year to make their profit on fireworks. And so their concern is, you can drive down to Dillon's or Walmart or whatever, and they have stands and they can sell them for 7 days. So if they're only allowed here in Bel Aire for 4 days, people will just go down there and buy them. So that was their concern on changing that. Detonation days, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, they all said it should be more. They should be allowed to shoot them more. And some of their comments were, people have busy schedules. They may want to do a family shoot one night and then the actual 4th have another big display. Most of the time, they're just kids and parents playing in the evening. 80% of the sales are small fountains and kid items. Of course, they said, which was a concern of the council, was, whether permissible or not, people are going to shoot them off. They'd like to see our local rules parallel with the state of Kansas and other cities. Some of our neighboring cities allow them to shoot them off more than just one day. And they were more concerned about the times of the day than the days, not midnight or 7 a.m, things like that, that should be a concern more, is not the days, but the times. And then, of course, the more you get to allow people to shoot them off, then the less enforcement that the police would have to do. And just some other comments. A question was, if they are limited on the dates they can sell, if it goes from 7 to 3, then is their permit going to be cheaper because they can only sell them a few days? They think it's best to do what other local cities are doing. Again, they all mentioned that once a year is a small window to sell and shoot. And then I asked them about, what days are their bigger days? And they said it based on when the 4th falls, as to whether that's the busiest day or whatever. And then the chief is here because you wanted to talk about enforcement. So he is here if you want to ask him some enforcement questions, but we'll kind of let you carry the conversation with what we found out.
Well, I would appreciate just a quick rundown on what enforcement's like. I know you and I have talked before about issues with enforcing fireworks, but it might be good just to have a very brief summary of what that looks like.
Well, to start with, I think I should back up instead of starting off with enforcement, the other things we do. Annually, each news station provides education to the public about what is permissible and what's not permissible in Sedgwick County and in the city of Wichita. And if we mimic the city of Wichita, that would probably be beneficial because I think with each small city having their own rules, it causes confusion. It results in questions as to what can I do and what
Can you
I
try to
not do.
speak more in the microphone? I think you're not coming through.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we rely on the news stations to provide a lot of information to the public about what is permissible and what's not permissible. Then we also, as a department, do what a lot of other departments do, and we use social media. We've made posts on Twitter, but primarily Facebook, to educate our community, our followers on those media channels, what is permissible, what's not permissible. We also provide through, and it's a program through Sedgwick County Communications, it's a phone number to call in complaints. So we provide that to the public also. So as we're out on patrol, if we encounter a problem, we try to do education first. Let people know what the rules are. So in case they've missed the news, in case they've missed social media, the newspaper, etc., then we educate them on what they can do and what they can't do. And we seek their cooperation. And the majority of the time we get that cooperation. But we get a lot of the questions that have been asked and brought up by you and by the operators of the fireworks stands. Why only one day? I can buy them. I have to wait. Well, if the 4th is on Sunday and I'm having my big party on Saturday, why can't I shoot them out now or off now? We get those questions as we encounter these people, our citizens in our community, and those are good, valid questions, but it's for you to deal with. We're out doing education and enforcement. For those people who won't abide and those people who don't take the education through social media, the news outlets, us, and they don't decide that they want to cooperate, then we'll do enforcement. I can tell you that in the 8.5 years I've been here, I think we've written 3 or 4 tickets to people for violating the fireworks ordinance. We try to keep track of the number of complaints that we get, and it's around 10 to 15 each year. But if we count, and I would challenge you this year to do it, if they call you directly, keep track of who they are, and then amongst you, not all as a group, or maybe as a group when you're in a meeting, compare those names.
Careful.
Because, I don't get together
can't go
outside of a
there.
meeting. But compare those names and you'll see that the same 3 to 4 people are calling and complaining to get their way, to make people quit firing fireworks. They have valid points. You know, it's against the ordinance. But you get to decide whether to change the ordinance to better match the majority of the community rather than those few people that are calling and complaining. So that's where we are on enforcement. We'll enforce if somebody draws enough attention to themselves and is enough of a problem to result in enforcement. But that's our discretion, and that's what we get to determine when we're out on the street.
So the people, rehash here, the people that you're talking to are people you just noticed shooting stuff off, or people that have been complained about?
If we get a complaint and we move into the area and we encounter somebody out in the driveway with fireworks, we stop and talk to them. Or if we're out on patrol and we see somebody getting ready to, you know, on the 28th of June, get ready to set up a display in their driveway, we stop and tell them what the ordinance is to educate them on what that is.
And during the evening, when you see all this stuff going up at night, you just ignore it unless somebody calls? Or
No, if we see the illegal activity, we'll go and educate the person or the group.
okay, because I've noticed it many years, and I don't complain because I like fireworks, but I also like our current ordinance. Okay, I don't want fireworks every night for a week.
Another problem for us for enforcement lands with the Kansas laws with us making an arrest or citing somebody. This type of thing, we have to have some positive proof, some evidence. We can't speculate. We can't come around the corner and see somebody holding a punk and a mortar tube with a group of people after having seen a mortar go up in the air, and we can't make an arrest just on that. Our hunch is, our speculation is that person maybe set off the one we saw. But if they didn't, we have to be able to prove it.
Right.
Okay.
But if you see the mortar tube in the driveway and you see the guy standing there with the punk, do you stop and?
Oh, we certainly talk to them. Yeah,
Okay.
and request or demand that they stop. But we can't necessarily make an arrest because we can't go in front of a judge or a jury and say for certain that that's the person that set off the one we saw when we were still around the corner.
And since we're talking legal here, the part of the ordinance that somebody's proposed, I think, is that it requires the homeowner's approval to do this. Can we find fault with the homeowner if they're shot off at his house? Is there a
No, they don't have any
recourse
intent
there?
to violate the ordinance. It's the person who is firing off the fireworks. And then that could, I mean, the what ifs are myriad.
Okay, well, if we're going to put it in an ordinance that we certainly ought to have something that's legal.
Well, I think you could, it's not the person who owns the property that would be in violation. It's the person who sets the firework off on the property.
Yeah,
It's
and
not
what,
theirs.
I know I read that in there somewhere that we were requiring homeowner approval for them to shoot stuff at their house.
I think what you're referencing, Mr. Mayor, if I can,
Yes, please.
is that the fireworks may be detonated at a private residence with permission of the adult residing at that residence. So that really helps it. So if we do get in a position where we're enforcing against juveniles, we have the adult in the situation to actually pass those fines and responsibility to. If we're in a situation where we have several adults and the homeowner said, well, I didn't let them do it, I don't know who let them do it, who allowed them to do it, then we're looking at, were they on the property? Were they off the property? It's still a full-on investigation. But the section you're talking about allows any juvenile to be somewhat, those fines and fees to be, for us to pass them to the homeowner. And that's consistent with other cities as well.
Okay, and I would hope we're doing the same thing now. If we see somebody, some kid shooting them off in the driveway, we go talk to the
So I
parents.
think it was 3 or 4 years ago, we got a complaint on Edinburgh and Perryton area. I was off. I came in my personal truck because as soon as somebody sees the shiny sides of a police car, they stop doing the bad stuff, you know. So I came in and it took a period of about 2 hours to find the residence where it was happening because they were just doing them every so often. So it goes up, it flies that way. You don't see the trail, but you see it burst. So getting in the general area, finally, I parked right there at the intersection, and nearby, I saw 2 guys go out in the driveway, set it off. Okay. I got a good physical description of them, called for an on-duty officer. They came up, we went up, I identified the 2, and we cited them. Okay. But that was just the beginning, because then another 2 hours of turning in fireworks, and we don't have the facilities to turn in fireworks. They're explosives. And then the paperwork on top of that. So 2 hours of my time, the officer's time, for I think, what is it, a $35 fine, or maybe up to $500, but the usual is probably about $35 is what they're fined. Yeah. The cost benefit of a full-on investigation, is that really in our best interest, you know, time-wise, with the number of personnel that we have?
Yeah, and for one case, probably not. But for the value of training of the whole neighborhood, that those people went and talked to all their friends, maybe so. Because they say, you know, we lost our fireworks, we had to pay a fine. And that may be a better social media than putting it on Facebook.
Okay.
And one thought came to me while we were talking about that. I don't know how we could do this, but what if they had the option to destroy the fireworks themselves by soaking them in water? I know that's how the fire department gets rid of them.
They normally seize them and take them to one of the substations, at least in the city of Wichita, and then they're turned over to the EOD, the Explosive Ordinance Disposal Team, and they take them out to the disposal site and destroy them.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Well, I heard at the
Whereabouts that
city
they-
of Cheney doing it that way is
Oh,
fine.
okay. Well, and that very well could be. There's not just one good way to
Yeah.
handle that.
Well, I just was thinking if they had to do it themselves, they might get an even better lesson than getting a fine.
And we would have to discuss the civil nature of
Yeah.
taking a property or requiring
I'm not
that.
saying take their property. I'm saying stand there and give them the option. Do you
I'm
want the
not-
ticket, or do you want to destroy these while I watch?
So I'm not a big fan of that idea for this primary reason. Most fireworks are made of magnesium. You can't put a magnesium fire out with water. It will keep burning underwater. And so soaking them fireworks in water doesn't do you any good. And you have to have special chemicals to do that, put that fire out.
And
So,
I'm just a policeman.
okay. But I've seen
I'm
this.
just throwing
I've
out
seen
ideas.
the evidence of magnesium fires, and they are not pretty. So, okay.
Well, I'm glad this is in your side of the court. We have, in years past, it's the night before and the night of the 4th of July, or the the big shoot 'em off nights. So that's what we've had to primarily contend with. And then the majority of, since I've been here, the majority of the 4th of July nights, I've been out, and we split the city up in sectors, and starting at about 11:45, we start making the rounds and telling people to make sure they end by midnight. So that's another part of the education process, even when it's the night for them to shoot them off.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Hamburg.
So Chief, what of the complaints you get, what percentage or how many do you think have to do with us being right adjacent to Wichita and their noise complaints where people are just annoyed they're hearing them, but it's perfectly legal earlier in the week?
One of the biggest areas where we've had complaints, is down on Rodeo, because right across the tracks is Wichita. So they're shooting them off over there, but some of the people on Rodeo have complained in the past. There's nothing we can do about it because it's out of our jurisdiction, but the noise carries. Yeah, so we try to focus on what we can control within the city limits of Bel Aire, and trying to get notice out as best we can that the time is drawing nigh to stop.
Is that something we could work with the Wichita police, or maybe even just the homeowners association down there to get some kind of resolution? Because I know those fireworks aren't legal in Wichita either, the ones people are complaining about. Anything over 6 foot tall is illegal in Wichita.
I clarified
That
that
doesn't mean we can enforce it, but
I just clarified that the detonation days in Wichita are June 27th to July 5th, and the detonation days in the county, which we abut the county in some places, are June 1st through the 4th. So, and you're right, 6 feet.
but the ones
I'm
making
sorry,
the
July
noise,
1st. Not That'd
the
be
ones-
forever.
I think the ones people complain about the noise on are the ones that are shooting up 30, 40 feet in the air
Oh.
and making the huge boom that shakes your house.
They're
Not the little whistling things and fun stuff kids do out in their driveways.
I would tend to agree with you. And when you said that, I've a few times in my life I've been driving on 135, so you can get an overview of the whole city. And from the east to the west and the north to the south, it is those big aerial displays. There's not enough officers to handle all that, or firemen. To handle
I
all
understand you can't catch everybody, but if we don't catch anybody, then we're just throwing it open to anarchy, and there's no reason to have any fireworks ordinance.
Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think that's what's before us. We're trying to balance the sale date with the shooting date. And I have heard the same complaint since I've been in Bel Aire. Why do we only shoot them off one day? Why? And I think there's a balance there of finding some more days to shoot them off where people have the flexibility of when they can shoot them instead of just the single night. But I also agree that I don't think that's going to completely stop people from shooting them outside the given window that we come up with. That's just going to happen, I think.
People
But-
still speed.
But I mean, based on the number of complaints you've said you've gotten over the years, that sounds like a pretty small number to me. So I don't know that this is really a major issue as far as the complaint number that you have reported to us. But I do think it's still something worth considering, extending the shooting window.
The complaints, and only because I've been here doing this longer than any one of you've been on the council, and I've gone from council to council. And those people who have told me, who have called, those council members who've given me the names of people who've called, it's the same people each year. And I respect that it disturbs them. They have a right to be free, since the ordinance says that it can only be done on one day. And I'm not trying to alleviate my interaction with them because people are violating the law, but one day seems tight, especially when the one day isn't on a Friday or a Saturday. That's, in my mind's eye, those are the perfect days for the 4th of July, but doggone it, it falls on other days.
If the 4th was a Monday, I just assume they set them off on the Sunday night. But it's hard to write an ordinance where you can, we'd have to lay out every day. If the 4th falls on Tuesday, when can you set off fireworks? So,
Too convoluted.
yeah, it'd be really convoluted.
Chief, one question I had for you is working with Sedgwick County Fire Department. What kind of communication what does that look like for you guys during those days that there are fireworks going off, when there's a call for a fire or an injury? Do you guys interface a lot with them? I guess the question I have, where I'm going with this, is do you see an issue with extending the window and increased incidents, and do you feel prepared to handle that if we were to increase the days?
Our interaction with them would just be in a support role. There have been a few times when we've been the first ones out on a grass fire or some incident, but then we draw back and do scene management, traffic control, so that they can do the work they need to do. So maybe your question might be better suited for Sedgwick County Fire, because some of the things I think we're all concerned about is those things that happen with the fireworks, those negative impacts of the fireworks. And I don't have any information on the number of fire calls that have been made, because those minor ones we don't get called out on, where it's a grass fire in the backyard. Several years ago, we lost a house up on Farmstead, and I believe it was due to fireworks. We were out on. But Sedgwick County Fire might be better suited to answer that particular set of questions. But how many calls that they get. But as we go day to day during the 4th of July season, we don't have that much.
One question that I have, our regulations for what's allowed to be shot here are different than Wichita's. I assume that if we were to revisit the duration of, when you could shoot off the fireworks, we probably also as a city have an option to regulate what types of fireworks are shot off here. I'm wondering if it would be prudent to consider that, if we're trying to be consistent in the area, the fact that we sell a lot of stuff or allowed to be sold a lot of things that are not legal one block over probably creates a lot of problems for Wichita and a lot of concerns for the people that live just over the side of the railroad tracks, similar to right now how we're different on the days that we can shoot off the fireworks.
I agree with your comment, and I must say I have driven out of Sedgwick County to buy fireworks in the past, but I did not detonate them even in Kansas, which was probably illegal too. I took them out to some private property that I owned in Oklahoma, where it was perfectly legal to set off anything I wanted to.
So are we coming to a consensus that we want to make the detonation period match the sale period? Is that what we're saying here?
I'm not saying that, so there's no consensus.
Well,
I may be overrode by the votes, but there's no consensus. Okay?
I would agree with the statement that was made.
From my perspective, I like the idea of, consolidating the detonations into a single day. I think that in an ideal scenario is a happy balance of letting people shoot off fireworks to celebrate the 4th, which is just a day-long holiday typically, with the folks that really find that traumatic, that have pets that find that traumatic, that have children that can't sleep at night because of the fireworks blowing up next door. There are lots of valid reasons, including things like PTSD, to be concerned about fireworks. But I think the reality is because we're so close to Wichita, and because of the volume of non-compliance that we have, we've written an ordinance that nobody is following. At least that's what I observed on the 4th. And if it takes an officer 2 hours to deal with one of those calls, that would explain why I saw on a few occasions some of our officers driving by on a main street, while somebody's got a firework display going on in their driveway, right? We don't have the staff to police at that level and spend 2 hours at every single house that is detonating fireworks in a non-compliant way. So it makes no sense to me to have an ordinance that we don't have an ability to enforce.
Could we get citizens to help pinpoint and call in the officers later? Like a citizens patrol for fireworks? You look quizzical, like you're not understanding that either. That or you're thinking really deeply.
I'm wondering how that would work, just real quick. How would that work?
Well, for example, if it was me, and I'm not volunteering, but if it was me, you could give me some sort of power and a phone number. And if I was driving down the street and I saw it going on, I could call somebody and they'd show up in a few minutes.
I'm going to pick you up at about 7 o'clock on the 4th of July so you can ride with me.
I don't want to do it on the 4th of July. I want to do it on the 5th and the 3rd. Because I've
Okay,
seen stuff going
the
off on
3rd.
the 5th and the 6th.
Because we won't make it for 5 blocks
On the
before
4th, no. you
before
won't
we're
make it-
tied up and
you
we
won't make it
can't
2
warn
houses on
the other
4th.
people that they can't do what they're doing. So
And
what
again,
Mr.
it's
Smith
back to
said.
what we said, though, that if you can stop
Stop
one,
one.
maybe you can stop a bunch. You're not going to catch everybody. I agree.
Well, I respectfully disagree with your point of view on how we should do that.
It's a suggestion. It's not a
Okay.
request.
I'm
I'm trying to find ways that we can address this and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
get a better result.
Well, and one of the big problems is exactly what was pointed out by Mr. Smith here, is that it's illegal for the detonation between the 27th and the 3rd. And that makes criminals out of those people who do it. They shouldn't do it. They should follow the law, but those who choose not to, there are so many. They are hard to catch, and do an effective enforcement on, and then pass that information on to other people so that they don't do it.
Okay, I don't think you quite followed my plan, but maybe you did.
I kind of follow, John, what you're saying. I think it still adds a large amount of follow-up work for a short-staffed police department, in my opinion. And
If you
I
want
see
to,
what you're saying.
And,
but
and
if you
for
want to
the
prosecute, yes, it does.
and
If you just want to educate, then if the guy, an officer shows up and does the education routine and he's gone in another 5 or 10 minutes, it's time consuming, but it's not the 4-hour, 5-hour ordeal to catch one perpetrator.
well, I would, and Ty would attest to this, I would prefer to educate, 10 people than focus on one so that they can pass it on to their friends not to do it, but still have 9 more doing it while I'm tied up. I would rather get all 10 and get them all 10 warned, so that we
And
have some compliance.
that is what I was trying to accomplish. I wasn't suggesting you haul them all down and throw them in the hoosegow, right? I just was wanting them to be contacted and educated. And if they fault, the plan you've got seems to be fine. Find them, educate them. If they repeat, find them.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of a way that would make it easier to find them, because you said it took you 2 hours to locate them. And
Oh,
if
yeah.
there's somebody else driving around, they
Well,
can waste their 2 hours,
I'll tell
especially if
you
they're
that-
annoyed with.
that the reason why that took 2 hours is we had a serial caller and complainer, and he called and complained. So I went out. We didn't get any more complaints, but they were still setting off the fireworks. So it took me 2 hours. It wasn't that this person was calling in and I was able to narrow it down. I had to do it with the aerial up in the sky without any further complaints, just to help this one person get some resolution, because they were so worked up about the proximity of the fireworks to their home.
Okay, and we could get that person to be the one to go find them instead of expecting the police to do all
That
the
person
footwork.
won't do that, but
Maybe that particular one won't,
Yeah.
but some people would, if they knew that something would happen. That's probably also why you're only getting 6 or 7 complaints, is because they don't think anything's going to happen if they complain. I've heard that. It's
well,
not worth
and
complaining
we can
about
go
because
get that
they
one
can't do
person,
anything.
but then we can't go speak with the other people while we're tied up on that. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is I think we can do more with education instead of being the heavy-handed government to
And I'm fine
get
with
somebody
that.
for
I'm
for
agreeing with that part.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe you're not hearing that, but I am agreeing with that. I'm just trying to figure out how to educate more people. Is that, and you have to find the right people to educate. Somebody's got to do the footwork to find out who's setting them off. And if we can find somebody besides the police department to do that, it would save your guys a lot of time. And in today's day and age, people could video it, show it to the officer when he came up, and he might not be able to identify the exact person to be able to write a ticket, but he could certainly go to the right driveway, knock on the door if they're not still out there doing it, do the education routine and go on to the next thing. And yeah, that'll take 10, 15 minutes at least, but maybe it would help.
Chief, on that night, because this is one night, you guys are driving all night. So you're stopping all the time, or the night before or whatever, but the nights that people are maybe having repeat offenses, the night before, maybe the night after. You guys are driving all the time. It's not like you've stopped patrolling those nights.
Right.
You're
Correct.
patrolling. You're in the area. When you see somebody, you stop and say something. I don't think having a bunch of extra people calling is going to help you be more effective. Do you disagree? Like, you driving around, finding people and educating them on the spot is as effective as you're going to get.
It is not hard to find people
Right.
on those
So-
previous nights or the night after to stop and educate them. It's not hard at all.
So I don't think that's an issue.
Well, under that statement, then we have a serious problem with our fireworks ordinance, and maybe we should get rid of fireworks if we cannot. If he's got somebody he can just drive over and stop at someplace, we've got a huge percentage of the population ignoring the law.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking
Yes.
about
Yeah,
expanding the
I
days
think
because
that
we know
is the
it's not
problem.
effective. I all agree
think
on that.
If
I
we
don't
wrote an
think that's
ordinance
gonna
that
help.
completely banned fireworks, I don't think a single thing would change.
And you're probably right, but we also would not be selling them, so we wouldn't be contributing to the problem.
Yeah, John, I'm not sure we're going to agree. That's okay. But we're talking about changing it to make it more effective.
No, you're talking about changing it so you don't have to deal with the problem we have. That doesn't make it more effective. That just throws the problem out.
Well, to me, Chief has said he's done an education effort. He doesn't want to create a bigger burden for enforcement. Educating first, education first, enforcement second. That's not going to change. I think that's still probably the goal.
The problem, I think, and you stated it, I think Justin stated it, Mr. Smith, is that the question comes up, why is this not longer? Because people feel that the current ordinance is unjust in a way. I don't want to be a criminal, but my kids really want to display, and it's Saturday night, and I've got family over, and we just had a barbecue, and it's so close to the 4th of July. I'm going to do this. They don't want to be criminals, but they choose to go ahead and violate the ordinance because it's the 4th of July. I mean, it's coming up. It's that weekend or leading up to. I think a lot of people feel as though the current ordinance is not as just as it could be in their mind's eye, because everybody has a little different view of what's right and wrong with the 4th of July. Big displays, small displays, sparklers versus snakes versus the big aerial displays. So that's why I said at the beginning, I'm glad it's you and not me.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Hamburg.
Just big picture, my thoughts on this. I appreciate the survey from the vendors because I wondered if shortening sales days was a good thought, and it seems like that's not. I could get on board with maybe a halfway 4 days of detonation, but it sounds like it's not even an issue earlier in the week. I'd rather just match it to our sales and have our police and their scarce resources focus more on these 2 a.m. detonators than sales days. So I think I'm most in favor of matching it to sales days and expanding. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Gregg.
I'm along those
David.
lines. I think we should at least go the weekend adjacent to the holiday, and then the easiest to enforce. Like we say, our police are already overburdened, and we also have already burdened our fireworks sales, with the charitable allegiance. And so I think we have to decide, do we want to solve the majority, go with the majority opinion, or try to cater to an issue that a few people have. And then the only question I'd have for you, Chief, is that complaint mainly the extra days or the after hours? Because I'm like that, like Emily, the 2 a.m. would be the bigger issue to me than the
That's
weekend before.
that's a big issue. And that's usually around the day before, the day after, or the day of, when they should stop at midnight. The complaints that we get are only because they're going off, only because somebody's detonated a firework, especially the big ones that go up and rock the house. Scare the dog, keep the kids awake. Yeah. And those will start as soon as it gets dark, sometimes even while it's light. So the fact that they're going off is the complaint for the majority of our complainants. Some of them after hours, because right after midnight, then the phone calls start coming into 911 to their phone call service. So it's just the fact that they're going off anytime before the 4th currently.
So I
Does-
read someplace in here that it seems that enforcement or violations have gone down in areas that have expanded the fireworks time of being able to detonate. Do you have any feel as to whether compliance after midnight or 10 o'clock or whatever the curfew for fireworks is, does that improve also in doing those things?
Well, we don't have a great number of phone calls from after midnight. A
Okay.
lot of the calls we get are from Wichita, where people are still shooting them off, and people here are hearing that.
You're
That
thinking it's
report.
in Bel Air.
Yeah. We get complaints when they have fireworks at the wind surge game.
Okay.
Those same people
Do you wanna
that
go
call
down
on
and
the
tell them to
around the
quit doing
4th,
that?
they call for wind surge fireworks. So,
Okay.
and see how far away we are.
Yeah.
Sound travels well. My
Yeah.
daughter got to listen to the Rolling Stones concert in her bedroom when it was at WSU. So
Does anyone else have thoughts on so we've talked about the duration and we've talked about the hours a little bit. What about the type of fireworks? We're matching the county today. We're not matching Wichita today. I think where we're headed is that our sales would match the detonation days, which I think is where Wichita's at, or at least closer to that. What about the types of fireworks? What
I
does
don't
everyone
think we're matching the county, because I don't think you can buy them in the county. You have to buy them in an incorporated area, such as Bel Air, Park City, Keachai.
Well, I guess I made an assumption
Um,
there that that's where the limitations would come in as to what is allowed to be shot. I guess I don't know where.
Kelly, does the county have an ordinance on detonating fireworks?
Yes.
That's the question here.
Yes, the county
Okay.
has an ordinance where in the county you can sell what is legal at the state level, which is the broadest amount of fireworks. And Bel Air has the same. You can sell what is legal at the state level. Other cities, Wichita has a more limiting ordinance. So they have the 6-foot rule and stuff like that. Andover has its own. So
Okay, I may have made a false assumption because I have never seen a fireworks tent in the county since I was a kid. Not the last 10, 20 years anyway. They've all been within city limits.
yeah,
Is
I've
it
not seen
possible
one
that
either.
there's a distinction in being able to be licensed to sell versus being able to detonate?
Yeah, I can see that. If you're wanting, yeah, there's a different license for selling and a license to detonate.
So it may be that you're allowed to detonate in the county, but there's nobody that's licensed to sell there.
Well,
that would
another
be
aspect of that might be just the retail nature of the fireworks. You want to be where people are, and if you're in the rural areas, not very many people are going to stop the fireworks stand. I mean,
Yeah, but you can still
Okay,
put your
so if I
stand
can-
just outside the city limits.
To
That's what
clear-
they used to do when I was a kid.
Ms. Kelly.
I'm so sorry, sir. Fireworks may be possessed and sold from July 1st through the Independence Day holiday in all unincorporated areas of Sedgwick County. However, it is illegal to sell or buy fireworks in the unincorporated areas of Sedgwick County.
Oh,
So,
okay. So it is,
exactly.
it is, has to be incorporated, an
Correct.
incorporated city.
To purchase.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, and somebody mentions Saturday keeps coming up, and I don't have a problem with people shooting off fireworks on Saturday night if it's the night before the 4th. I'm fair game for that, but the problem is,
It's illegal.
well, if we made it legal, okay, yes. But the problem then becomes, you can't just say the Saturday before the 4th, because the Saturday before the 4th might be 3 or 4 days, and then there's this big gap, and people again won't understand
Could be the
why they
previous
can't.
weekend.
Could be 7 days before.
Yeah.
This is exactly the reason why I'd be in favor of just matching the sell dates. Just takes all that out.
Yeah, I'm afraid if you don't do that, you're going to get a very convoluted
Yep.
ordinance. And
Well.
it's kind of like, oh, how do we understand what that really meant?
I think our previous council came up with a very good compromise, but enforcing it is the problem here.
Chief, what are your thoughts about types of fireworks to be sold?
Those big ones are really loud. Uh,
That's a good answer.
I love a good fireworks show. So, when we've had them here, I've certainly been in attendance. I think my personal opinion on that, I'd like to reserve. But a lot of people have the big ones. And that's what we have to contend with, is what other people do and what they're allowed to do. I'll tell you, because of human nature, I feel as though if you restrict them to the 6-foot rule, you'll see the same thing that you see every year, and that's people will go to Andover or somewhere else, buy them, and then bring them in and continue to shoot them off. And then we're faced with the same enforcement issues and
Right.
problems that we have now.
What do you think if we made them totally illegal again? Would
And
we,
everybody's a criminal.
well, that's what would we mostly get compliance, or would we get so many people that they just,
And again, I say it facetiously, we have speed zone signs up. I could be busy all day long, and I am oftentimes, trying to enforce our traffic laws to keep people from driving 60 and a 40. It's human nature not to do the right thing. Sadly.
Well, personally, I think I would like to see us match the detonation dates to the sales date and not make a change in the type of fireworks that we could sell. I think that we'll be causing you to spin your wheels trying to catch up with that one if we don't.
Jackie, do you know what the ordinance is in Goddard? I know they go totally ballistic on the 4th, but I don't know that they're that bad any other day.
If you don't mind giving me a minute, I can check. I didn't look at any of this.
I mean, you need earplugs in Goddard on the 4th of July, but yeah.
Yeah, I do think the only way that it would be effective to restrict what is sold is if all of the cities were matching the same restrictions.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's the same issue. It's just it's
Yep.
what is the ordinance versus what is the time? Yeah, it's the same problem. And I mean the
Well,
type of
and
fireworks.
we got people in Bel Aire that don't realize they live in Bel Aire, I think.
Well, I understand that too, but
I mean, our border is a little bit funky in places. So, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with why our ordinance is a little struggling in the talk between Wichita and Bel Aire. So there's not a clean line. There's a lot of pockets.
and we abut, so we're not an island
Right.
off and away. We're right there next to a lot of excitement.
So they follow the state fire marshal's rules as well. They do have a few extra prohibitions. Toy paper caps containing more than 0.25 of a grain of explosive composition per cap. They have rules like that that are somewhat prescriptive, but generally they allow what the state fire marshal allows in Goddard.
So that with the, refresh me on that. That's only July 1st through the 4th, isn't it?
July. So the Goddard detonation times are, I thought I read it up here. It's actually, I think the 27th, but let me double check. Between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. on June 27th through July 3rd and July 5th, and 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. on July 4th.
So they have an even bigger window.
Right. It kind of
But
changes.
And then back to the county rules, they were only like 4 days, weren't they?
Correct. The county is the
One.
first through the,
First through the 4th.
is, the county is the first through the 4th.
Okay. Not getting anywhere. Everybody's got different rules.
So what's the general feeling of council, where we go with this? Do we give Ms. Kelly direction to go redraft the ordinance with expanded dates, or what should we do?
That's what I think I'm hearing. Expand the dates to match the sale dates and leave everything else alone.
Okay,
Bingo.
that looks like it's the vast majority. I don't have
There you go.
votes on it, but
Did you also want to, the original discussion was about tying it to the permits to nonprofits. Did you want to reconsider adding that back in?
I thought the draft that we saw did that.
I thought so too.
Only
Yeah.
for non-permanent buildings.
Yeah.
Right.
And
But that's not our current one.
That's not our current ordinance, but I thought that the draft we
draft
saw
one.
did that. I like that.
Okay.
draft, but I don't know.
For,
So-
for all vendors or for just, I'm not sure what it is you're saying you like.
I like the draft that says if you own a building here in Bel Air, you get a permit to sell fireworks. But if you don't own a building here, you have to partner with a nonprofit.
Okay. I would prefer that they all partner with a nonprofit.
I would prefer that we not restrict them at all to that. I think it's a carryover from when we wanted to ban fireworks. And so it tries to make us feel better by partnering with a nonprofit, but I don't really see the reason for it.
Okay.
I did at the council meeting get a general consensus to leave it as drafted, but there was still this debate. So I would, based on our last meeting, that part was going to stay as drafted, proposed. But if anybody would want, if the consensus changes tonight, then we can amend that too.
Well, some of the reason that was given previously for exempting buildings was because they paid more taxes, but I don't think they pay any more taxes. We don't get any more sales tax out of the fireworks or anything else, no matter how they're sold. And the buildings there are permanently all year round, and everybody, the two people that are using buildings have other functions that are doing year round. So I don't see the tie.
I personally don't have a super strong preference one way or the other on this. I was fine with it as drafted.
Me too.
Greg speaks how my heart really feels about this, but I was okay with it because it's been our standard and because we don't dictate what the deal is. They find a nonprofit and then they can work out their terms however they like, correct, in the current draft. Okay.
Well, if we're gonna exempt the buildings, then we ought to exempt the tents. We ought to do the same for everybody, is how I feel about it. And I think we should all lean towards the nonprofits, but but it ought to be all one or all the other, not half and half.
Mr. Welch,
Mr.
why do you
Lasher.
think we should have the nonprofit involved?
What?
Why should we have the nonprofit involved?
I just like our nonprofits to have an opportunity to take advantage of a unique sales event. They have enough difficulty finding ways to make money.
Mr. Lasher, have you done any questioning about the nonprofit issue versus the for-profit issue? Would these, I guess, to clarify what I'm asking is, do you think these particular businesses that currently are not partnered with nonprofits would have any issue with partnering with a nonprofit if we made it that ordinance?
No, and it's kind of interesting because that in 2015, that piece went out that required a nonprofit, but yet, from what I understand, is the building actually still partners with Sunrise because they originally did, and they have students work there, and so Sunrise gets some money. And then the tent up here, usually at 45th and Woodlawn, has always partnered with the Lions Club.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting that it was taken out, but it still occurs. Now, I don't know if it's because they don't know that they have to, or it's just been a good relationship and they like to do that. I don't know. But
There might be a middle ground option where we could have a different permit fee or license fee for organizations that partner with the nonprofits and a fee reduction to encourage but not require that partnership.
Idea.
I don't see Jackie saying that's not legal, so I guess I might. Because I really want her opinion before we do something like that.
Do you have Mr. Lasher, and thank you for the information about the one facility. How about the other building? Do you have any feel for what their thoughts might be in that respect?
no. And as Emily stated, there's nothing in any of the codes or anything that requires a dollar amount. So, it's if you put it in there that they have to, they could potentially go to the Boy Scouts and say, hey, if we give you $100, can we, do, and they can agree to that. So again, that's as Emily said, that's for them to work out. I do, and I'm going to represent the city revenues. And Ted, my concern with adjusting the fee for someone that is supporting a nonprofit means the city's supporting the nonprofit, because now everybody's not paying the same fee because you're supporting a nonprofit. So the city's giving up some revenue.
Well, you could leave the fee where it's at today and have a new fee that is higher for the facilities that don't make the choice to partner with the nonprofit. And that would be my proposal, actually.
It sounds to me like all the facilities actually partner with nonprofits, because Wholesale Fireworks, if they're partnering with a nonprofit, I think Yaz actually is partnering with a nonprofit. Those guys building those cans aren't a for-profit business. So technically they're partnered with a nonprofit.
It makes business sense to partner with a nonprofit. They're a great source of cheap labor. I'm just saying we shouldn't mandate it.
So the real question is, do we want to mandate the nonprofit for all fireworks sales, or do we want to adopt an ordinance like it's been drafted, where if they have a physical building in Bel Aire, they don't have to do that? And just kind of, what's your opinion on that? I think that's kind of where we are right now. We just need to see who wants to do what. I mean, I guess after hearing what I've heard about the nonprofits, I'm okay if you say they got to be partnered with a nonprofit. But I'm also okay with the way it's drafted. So I'm fine with either one, personally. But we kind of need to know what's the sense of the council. So.
Well, the more I hear about this, it's already happening. It does make business sense for this to happen. I'm always in favor of less regulation. And so I guess I'm leaning towards not having that requirement for anybody. I do think it should be an all or nothing. Either it's the requirement for everyone or it's the requirement for no one.
I would agree with that. I don't like it being one way or the other. It's got to be all one way or not. So I'd be in favor of keeping it so that all are required to partner or none, but not necessarily having the stipulation about a building. I can go either way. I'm indifferent.
Yeah, that seems to make more sense. I would almost like to hear from the vendors, kind of what's done nationally. And it's like Greg said, it seems to be happening organically, so we can take the heavy hand out of it, and it would probably still make sense.
Okay, so I'm, just for clarification, because I'm hearing some say, take it out. And I'm hearing some say they're okay if it's one way or the other. And I'm not certain what I've heard you just say. You want.
It's
you want
because I
the-
can see it both ways. I think it would be better to take out the
nonprofit-
requirement
the requirement.
and make it the same across the board.
And would you support it if the requirement was in there?
Again, because we're not dictating terms,
Right.
I'm sort of okay with it.
Okay.
But then if we're not dictating terms, then why is it in there? So
Okay. Well, and I understand that. So that's part of the compromise of this body, right? Because some think it should be there, and I kind of am in favor of a provision in there for the nonprofits, but I could see the other issue as well. So, but it sounds like we would get, and obviously we can't say what the council will say, but it sounds like we would get full support of an ordinance that said that you have to be a partner with a nonprofit. If I'm hearing everyone here, I mean, I'm hearing that some people have stronger feelings towards that than others, but that everybody probably would support that.
Let me
Maybe
throw out
not everybody, but
throw out a different wrinkle here. Right now, we haven't had more than 4 applications.
We're not-
What if our policy suggested that we would give preference to those groups that partner with nonprofits? If we had 5 applications or more, we're only allowing 4. So if we get a couple other groups that come in and want to sell fireworks,
I don't think-
instead of just preference on date, we could preference also on your partnership with a nonprofit.
my personal view is you probably never see that because to make that application, you've got to have done a lot of homework already. And people say, well, I don't know if I'm going to get it. If I do the homework, I'm not going to do the homework.
Well, I would think if they did the homework, then they would go out and look for a nonprofit.
But if you, all I'm saying is,
So we're kind of pushing them that way without saying you have to do it.
yeah, okay.
To answer your question, could you have an additional sentence that said, in the event that there are more applicants than permits available, preference shall be given to and the applicants who apply for, who are connected with a Bel Aire nonprofit? You could put something in there like that.
Would that require us to wait until a certain date before we started issuing permits so that we would know that all the applicants had submitted and we could determine
Yep.
the appropriate priority?
So that's, from my understanding, that's how the clerk does it now. Like she takes applications and I believe it's like a $1,500 or $2,500 fee and then presents them all at the same meeting. So
It's not being done.
no,
I'm
she's
seeing-
presenting
I'm
them,
seeing
come in, trickle
I'm
in.
seeing several meetings.
Okay.
Do we have a deadline for when they need to submit?
Yes, there's a deadline.
Mhm.
But I think it's late. I think it's like June 15th or something like that. I was surprised when I read that. I was like, wow, they almost go to the last minute to apply for a permit.
Well, with that late a date, that's probably not a fair thing to throw on because nobody will know for sure if they're,
Hmm.
and probably we should have an earlier date so that they can make appropriate plans if they get denied.
Let's move that date to at least June 1st.
I'd say earlier than that, maybe May 1st, but I mean, they've got to negotiated lot rents and tents and everything else. They got to have time to do that.
Yeah. Sometimes they wait till the last minute.
Well, that's
We had
their
that last
problem.
year.
Right.
That's their problem. But if we, well, that
Yeah.
was because they didn't know that they couldn't use that lot.
Yeah. I knew it. But anyway, okay.
So as to the amended language, I'm hearing, to qualify, each applicant must own or operate an existing business in Bel Aire. Clean that up a little bit. At the time of application or sale, or be affiliated with and financially support a nonprofit located in Bel Aire. I've heard it say, and because we're basically removing the part that requires them to be physically present. So we're just saying they have to be in Bel Aire. The business has to exist in Bel Aire. The part I'm having a hard time with is or financially support a nonprofit in Bel Aire. So I can strike that whole part, that whole last part that says or financially support a nonprofit in Bel Aire. Or I can present it this way and then it can be considered at the meeting.
About the,
Well, I
the
think you
sentence,
strike
what
even,
about the sentence you was suggested of putting in there about preference will be given to nonprofits?
Okay, well, I heard the council member who suggested that saying that that might be too much with the deadline. So I didn't hear it take off any more than
I
that.
withdraw that suggestion. It was just something to debate.
Okay.
And I think for your answer, Jackie, you either remove that whole sentence that says you have to have a physical building or a nonprofit, or you change the sentence to you have to be associated with a nonprofit.
And see
because-
which one.
I think the consensus was one or the other, but not half and half.
Right.
I was thinking that I heard more of a consensus for just eliminating the nonprofit requirement altogether.
Well, I heard at least two
I'm-
said that, but
I'm
maybe
more in
three.
favor of that, and I thought
I could go either way.
Councilmember Dean and Councilmember David were also more in favor of that.
Because removing just that piece, I mean, you're still requiring that I haven't heard anybody say that you shouldn't be a Bel Aire business. I haven't heard anybody say that should go, that you could be coming in from another city and set up your fireworks tent here. I've heard everybody say you must own or operate a business in Bel Aire.
So if
Well-
you leave it that way, then that means that you're going to eliminate two of the four stands that we authorize right now because they don't have businesses in Bel Aire. You can't take that nonprofit section out of there because those aren't businesses. Those are organizations that are sponsoring a fireworks stand, and they're not businesses.
So
And
then you
they're not
remove
even
that
all-
whole piece, then if you remove the whole thing, then anybody can come in and qualify as long as they apply and get the permit, regardless of where they're from.
Correct. And why would we not allow that?
So, and I don't know enough about fireworks organizations, but are there national firework organizations that set up stands in multiple cities around this country?
I think most of the national fireworks work with local vendors.
Okay.
Yeah, I
secure
think
the
Bellino is all over, is my understanding, is that they operate
But they're
throughout the
selling-
region.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know, and that's what I know about fireworks. But
Well, that saves them having to have people on staff and hire and everything
All
else you have to do. So they farm it all out.
so could you repeat how you're thinking to present this to council?
Okay, at this point, after seeing heads nod, I'm going to take out the blue writing altogether. That says to qualify, so let me tell you what it'll say. To qualify, each applicant must apply and pay a permit fee to the clerk prior to June 16th of each year, of which such permit is requested.
Yeah.
So that totally removes that they have to have a physical presence in Bel Aire. That totally removes that they have to be affiliated with a nonprofit in Bel Aire. Because the alternative is to keep that, they're either a Bel Aire business or striking that they support a Bel Aire nonprofit.
Do they have to have a location secured before they apply?
That's part of the, right, because we have to have a site plan.
Okay.
Okay, so then I do want to move that date. I think June 16th is just way too late to be making an application for fireworks. It puts a tremendous amount of pressure on staff and council if somebody's a latecomer. And I just don't think that's fair to anybody that we do that. And I don't care if it's June 1st. Mr. Welsh says May 15th or May 1st. I don't care what the date is. We got to have more time. So I do want the date moved, but the other thing that concerned me of what happened last year, this was not a Bel Aire city government staff, city council problem, but it laid on our lap. Okay. Because we had a supplier who didn't do their a fireworks stand who didn't do their due diligence and find out that the site they thought they were going to put it at wasn't available. And so I don't know if we made a mistake or staff made a mistake or just they made a mistake, how'd they get a site plan proposed? Because that site wasn't available. I don't know how that happened, but I'm just a little miffed that happened. And I don't want the council to end up having to mitigate through that kind of an issue. I mean, that's them going and saying, this is where we want to be. Okay. Well, make sure you have all the rights to do that.
I imagine their site plan was valid. The problem was we didn't ask or see a lease.
No,
Yeah.
it couldn't have been valid. It wasn't available.
No, that's different. The site plan was fine. It was a plan they've used from years before. We personally didn't know that land wasn't going to be, we, the city, didn't know that land might not be available.
Oh, we certainly knew.
We
Yeah.
hadn't rented it to somebody else. It
was
wasn't
part
our
of the
land to
construction
rent.
pl- It's part of the construction plan.
I
It's
know,
part of the easements.
I know, but
bought
we
those
weren't the
easements.
ones that did that. We didn't issue the lease to anybody.
We bought the easement.
I
The
don't think
construction easement was purchased by the city of Bel Aire.
for that entire lot.
Well, the property owner just may not have handled that sale well by selling us an easement, continuing to possibly be in agreement with this fireworks company to come back and use this property year over year. I think that was a private issue, but yeah, we definitely can make sure we manage, with your deadline and us knowing that council is not wanting any wiggle room, we can limit those agreements for coming late.
It's possible that application was submitted a long time before July 1st. It seems like these applications show up really, really early.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody expected that lot was going to be accessible by that time. And I think we probably knew it wasn't, but it could be easy to project that maybe it might be available. I guess maybe the ask here is just to review the process to see if there's anything extra that needs to be added to our processes or to our ordinance so that those types of things don't happen.
Yeah, I think it might be good just to add then there, we require a lot of different pieces of paper from them. And maybe one is, some type of lease agreement or something so that, they've got a site plan, but we also know that they've got some kind of agreement in place to use it.
Right.
Yeah, I would even have that question because to take on that agreement, maybe we don't want that in our files specifically, but that specific question about, have you secured the property through an appropriate lease? We can definitely add something like that.
Is that something that you guys could look into and maybe bring us a proposal when this comes to the council meeting?
I don't think that's something we put in
You don't
this
want,
document though.
you don't want the
Jackie.
lease, you do not want the lease part of public record, but I can appreciate that. But what you might want that they could certify that they have secured a lease.
Yes, or secured an agreement to use the property for the dates required.
Right.
Yes.
And maybe what we need to put in this document is that there will be no amendments after whatever the date is, our final drop dead date for submission. So if you apply before May 1st and you find out on June 1st, you can't use the lot, too bad, too sad.
kind of a notice.
Yeah.
I agree with that statement. I think moving the date up does kind of help resolve some of these things because they're gonna be pressured to get that process completed earlier.
Mhm.
And I agree with you, Jackie. Don't you think that's just a checkbox on the application you add? I mean,
Mhm.
do you have it? And then you can go back on them and say, well, you didn't secure it. And this is why we're not allowing you to open the stand. Like, this is a deal breaker.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can
Okay.
review that process and bring it back
All
to
right.
council.
I think we have cussed and discussed it adequately.
Maybe more so.
All right, let's move on to the next item, which is the ballot question. And I think Jackie already has given us a report on that, but is there anything to discuss on the ballot question issue? And just to be clear, what the question was is that the city of Bel Aire had attempted to do a ballot question and was denied by the Sedgwick County Election Office based upon an opinion of Attorney General, and that non-binding matters cannot be put on ballots that have binding issues on them. And I understand, and correct me if I misstate this, that the USD 259 school board put a ballot question on today's ballot that was a binding matter. It wasn't not a non-binding matter.
Correct.
Well, and let me clarify. The reason 259s is binding is because their government organization is different than ours. They have to go through the ballot measure to change how they're organized, whereas the Bel Aire City Council can pass a charter ordinance on their own. Is that correct?
Mostly, the only thing I would add to what you're saying is that on this matter, the 259, it has to go through that process. There are certain matters that we have to go through ballot measures on. So we're not completely immune from being forced to take questions to the ballot. Just like 259 here is forced to take this question to the ballot, there are certain items that we'd have to take.
Okay, let me re-ask the question. If it's something we can pass by charter ordinance, is it something that would not be able to be on the ballot then because it would be non-binding?
Not necessarily. If trying to think, there could be a case where, oh, I'm trying to think of some of the early charter ordinances that would
So
have to go to ballot.
I'm just thinking back to the conversation that you and I had with the Attorney General's office about this matter.
Mhm.
And that was pretty much what they said, is that if it's a non-binding matter, it can't go on that ballot. And if you can do it by ordinance, then it makes it, by us making an ordinance, then it makes it a non-binding matter.
Well,
Because we can
certain
override
tax-
we can override the vote.
Certain tax questions you have to handle by ordinance, and they're also required to go through the ballot. So there are some finance laws, there's some areas, so I hate to say black and white. No, if it's charter, you can't. It's basically the way I prefer to describe it. What you're saying is essentially right, but the way I prefer to describe it is if it's statutorily required to be taken to the ballot box, then you have to do it that way.
Okay, so we'll say that there are some issues, we can't name them right now, that we
Right.
have to go to the ballot box for, but in general,
We have the freedom to.
everything's non-binding because we can do anything as a council.
Right. Yes, sir. And the way to go around that, which the mayor, has started the process, is to either have the Secretary of State reconsider that interpretation, and you're going to come down to staffing and costs for the election office, or go through our legislators and have them propose that be revised so we can take advisory questions to the ballot.
Okay, so I think the main takeaway here is that if we want to do something, we have to pass a charter ordinance, and if the citizens don't like it, then they have to get a petition together to override the charter ordinance.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So one financial determination would be or example would be a citywide sales tax. If you wanted to pass a citywide sales tax, you can't do it by charter. It's got to be a public vote. It's the only way it can happen. So that would be an example.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Any other matters we need to discuss this evening? If not, I will call us adjourned until next month, I think. Oh, we have a meeting next week, don't
Next
we?
week.
Yeah, okay, next week. Please come back. And then it will be, come back the 22nd, and then we will, or the 15th, and then we will be adjourned until
6.
December 6th. 3 weeks.